everyone. So Sunday, I unveiled my complete and, for all practical purposes, final plan for what I call Coliseum Reboot. Now, yes, I'm going back to that term for this reason. That's why I'm making this video. After running now 15 versions of the spreadsheet that you will see in the link below this YouTube video, I have come to the conclusion that, actually 22, but I've come to the conclusion that the best answer for a new stadium for the Oakland Raiders at Coliseum grounds includes a scenario that retains and upgrades the historic East Side. I say historic for this reason. Even though it was only built 20 years ago, it represents the return of the Raiders to Oakland from Los Angeles. It was specifically designed in concert with the Oakland Raiders when Al Davis was alive, and it is a sturdy, strong building that only needs upgrades in the areas primarily of the handling of exhibits, not exhibits, but halftime entertainment equipment, and also ingress and egress, and additionally more elevators. And there's arguably about a list of about 40 improvements I can think of. I could list in another video that the East Side needs to be brought up to today's standards. But the bottom line is, retaining it still saves us between $50 and $100 million in costs versus the brand new stadium that Mark Davis, Al Davis' son, who is the current owner of the Oakland Raiders, wants. My contention in going through the calculations and the numerical flows and the research on stadium costs and various different financing techniques used over the decades is simply this. Mark Davis hasn't seen a model, a physical 3D model of what a Raiders stadium would look like with the East Side retained at that site and upgraded. Yeah. So that call I make is a huge deal, and I don't care whether the hotel that I suggest is on the south side or the north with the baseball, that's stadium, that's not the issue. But the retention of the East Side is a big deal to me. It really is. Now, for those of you who are saying, okay, what's the plan, Zinni, because I didn't see the previous videos, it's this. Briefly, I started making a number of spreadsheet-based numerical models, financial models of a plan for a new stadium for the Oakland Raiders, a new stadium for the Oakland A's, primarily in retail, at the Coliseum complex. And I was going back to the original Coliseum City plan developed by the late Frank Dobson, Bob Lesty, and Steve Lowe in 2006 and presented to the Sports and Entertainment Task Force that I was at the behest of Oakland Mayor Ron Dellums and the chair of the task force, Chris DeBenedetti, in 2009. That task force is where the idea was presented, but then Councilman Larry Reed worked with a number of people at Redevelopment to essentially, frankly, take that idea and fashion it into this 800-acre monstrosity that no one bothered to put to spreadsheet and say, hey, can this actually be financed? So then we went through a succession of developers and development and investment groups, and now we have New City LLC, which is led by a gentleman by the name of Floyd Gebhardt, who says, I need $200 million of the city's money, and by the way, I wish Eric Grubman, the SVP for Business Affairs in the NFL, would stay the hell out of the Bay Area and let us get a deal done. Those comments really endear Mr. Gebhardt to the NFL greatly. They love to work with him. But I digress. Because of those events, that circus-like atmosphere that was developing, and the unprofessional progress made, or lack thereof, with respect to fashioning a financeable plan for stadium construction for our teams, I jumped in because of my background and started making a financial plan of my own, because I don't care. The trouble with Oakland is that we always talk about design and land use, but it's a proxy for not actually asking this question: can we pay for it? How do we pay for it? How does it pencil out? We don't deal with that. And so you can talk about design and land use and how you think Howard Terminal would be great for the A's stadium for years. You can talk about that for 16 years and get nothing done. And I said, because it's been 16 years and nothing's been done regarding A's stadium, we were talking about Howard Terminal for that long. Yet Lou Wolf doesn't want it, and neither do business groups. Again, I digress. So, because of that circus atmosphere I point to, I decided to simply go out and have a new plan formed by myself that asks this question: how do we come to a plan combination that meets Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf's objective of using no public money, and yet Oakland Raiders owner Mark Davis' objective of having a new stadium, and Oakland Athletics owner Lou Wolf's desire to have a stadium at Coliseum grounds? And I came up with a plan that is in the spreadsheet and designed the text below this in this email, this video, excuse me. Now, the idea is for a 68,000 seat stadium. This is the latest plan. This is the fine-tuned numbers. A 68,000 seat stadium for the Oakland Raiders, 300 luxury boxes, 45,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space at a cost of $770 million. We retain the east side, which has 22,000 seats, I might add. That would be right next to its own 610-room hotel wing, which could be either at the south end of the stadium or the north end, because I understand that the original Coliseum City plan did call for the A Stadium to be on the north end of the stadium and not the south end. Fine. Could turn the hotel to the north end, and the 610-room wing would basically begin as part of the north end of the stadium, north end zone building that I envision, and then there would be a 400-room wing for the A's stadium, which would be over here. And if you actually look at the plan, the hotel actually fits that configurative idea. The hotel itself would also be next to a new 200,000 square foot retail center in the promenade area that currently separates the stadium, the baseball football stadium, and the Oracle Arena. If you think about this, it'll be very, very exciting. Very exciting complex. The luxury boxes for the Raiders are priced at $125,000 each, which is actually below and within the current luxury box price threshold that the Raiders have been sending their old luxury boxes in. Yet these would be brand new, part of a brand new facility. Also, something else I'm excited about regarding the A side is $110,000 luxury boxes, 150 luxury boxes there, and 35,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space at that baseball stadium. Now, the overarching intent was to structure a lease revenue bond issue. And now we have, I originally quoted 9, now we have 10 different revenue sources to go into paying for lease revenue bond for this complex, this rebooted Coliseum City. For example, we have naming rights, a percentage of them, but a percentage of sponsorship, personal seat license, which is the average is about $2,000 per, which is the lowest in the NFL. The NFL G4 loan, percentage of hotel revenue, a percentage of external retail revenue, percentage of internal retail revenue, a portion of the parking revenues that are anticipated, a ticket seat surcharge, for both stadiums that will be applied, and finally, the use of luxury box revenues, a percentage. That's 10 different revenue sources to bear on a lease revenue bond issue. And what I'm calling for is an industrial development revenue bond issue, so that even in this case, the Oakland-Alameda County Joint Powers Authority would be the master developer, so we don't have to deal with the land entitlement problem. And the JPA could gather together all the small separate bond issues into one large bond issue, and that bond issue would cost, by this scenario, approximately $1.8 billion. It would have, not including the debt services reserve, a surplus of just over $200 million. When you add the debt service reserve, that comes to almost $400 million in surplus revenue. And the bond issue would be 40 years, and the debt service would be approximately $152 million. The internal rate of return would be 8.72%. So there's the plan as it lays out right now. And I cold called Piper Jaffray, and Diane Paulway is the managing director, and Piper Jaffray gave me a great deal of valuable time evaluating the plan, and I believe that Piper Jaffray is the best organization to implement this plan, this concept, however it comes out. They're an excellent team of people. They're honest, experienced, forthright. They've done a lot of great deals around the country, and they're working on a number of them right now. And I must add this: I have not been compensated by Piper Jaffray for this statement or anything. I cold called Piper Jaffray because I did research, and Ms. Pauley has extensive background in sports stadium financing around the country, as does her team. So that's how it lays out right now. And the reason why I did all this also is to demonstrate how much time as a city and county we have been wasting on this since the early 2000s, in 2006 when we had Coliseum City brought to us, all the way through today. And I thought, Mr. Gephardt and the prior iterations of groups involved in Coliseum City have wasted time saying, and then we had Oakland Mayor Gene Kwan saying we're going to have an investment from the Prince of Dubai, and showing that we really don't understand how, as a group of people in the city, how sports stadiums are financed. Lay people think, oh, if you're a billionaire, you can write a check. No one worth their salt does that, because if anyone writes a check for that, any investor writes a check, they're going to want to get their money back. And if they want to get their money back, then that money takes away from money for the sports team, as well as taking away from money from any other entity like a city or a county that may invest in. In other words, you've got another person to make happy. If an investor puts their money in it, they've got to get it back. And the more money you get back to that investor, the less money there will be for team operations, let alone the team itself or anything else. I mentioned the city and the county. That was an error in this case because you don't want the city and county subsidy, right? So scratch that point. But the point that I'm making is that if you want to have something where the team has revenue to finance its operations, and you bring in an investor, that investor is going to say, okay, where's my money? Then you've got to pay that investor, and that investor is going to get their chunk, which is going to take away from what the team is able to get. So when you say, hey, a billionaire can write a check, think again. That's not a smart decision. You want to do it so that the facility pays for itself. The 10 revenue sources I identified, they are wrapped into a bond, a lease revenue bond issue, and they pay for the facility. Some people call that private financing, but with the JPA actually issuing the bond, really it isn't. And that's why I say that Carson's lying, using bad terms. Anyway, there's the plan, and I'm going to shop it around, and I'm going to make other comments on it with subsequent videos. Thank you for listening. Tell Mark Davis to retain the east side of the Coliseum. Please upgrade it. Put about $20 million into an upgrade, somewhere in there.